A handful of ships arrive in Europe, carrying riches from distant lands, and a silent killer that would soon claim millions of lives. The Black Death reshaped Europe, toppling kingdoms, breaking feudal order, and forcing society to adapt in ways that gave rise to the modern world. But what if those ships had never carried the plague? What if Europe had been spared the deadliest pandemic in its history? Tonight we set sail into an alternate past and explore what the world might have looked like if the Black Death had never happened. In 1347, Genoese ships docked at Constantinople's Golden Horn, carrying silks, spices, and treasures from distant lands. But hidden among the wealth were fleas infected with Yersinia pestis. Within just 4 years, the Black Death would kill a third of Europe's population, shattering the foundations of medieval society. But imagine a world where those ships never carried the plague. What if the Black Death burned itself out in the steppes of Central Asia and never reached the bustling ports of Venice, Genoa, or London? What if Europe escaped history's deadliest pandemic? Europe in 1347 was not preparing for radical transformation. It was reinforcing centuries-old traditions. Feudalism tied peasants to estates, their lives dictated by obligations to lords and clergy. Cities remained small, their economies tightly controlled by guilds that valued tradition and quality over innovation. Universities were still modest and focused almost entirely on theology, and the Catholic Church reigned supreme, its authority unquestioned. Without the shattering demographic collapse of the plague, this system could have endured for generations, perhaps centuries more. In our timeline, the devastation of the Black Death broke feudal hierarchies. Labor shortages gave peasants bargaining power. Wages rose, new opportunities opened, and social mobility emerged. The Church, weakened by death and disillusion, faced growing criticism, and intellectual life began to move beyond purely theological bounds. Out of the ruins came the Renaissance, the scientific revolution, and eventually the industrial age. But without the plague, this chain reaction would never have started. Feudal order would have remained rigid, the Church's dominance unchallenged, and Europe's intellectual life locked in continuity with the medieval past. But does that mean Europe would have been stagnant? Not necessarily. Stability can also produce its own kind of flourishing. Gothic architecture, already astonishing, might have evolved into even greater engineering marvels with centuries more refinement. Monastic scholarship, uninterrupted by crisis, might have achieved insights that our fractured timeline missed. Guild systems, preserving their traditions, could have created artistry and craftsmanship that no industrial machine could rival. Instead of the revolutionary burst of the Renaissance, Europe might have experienced a steady perfection of medieval traditions, producing a society beautiful, stable, and refined, but deeply traditional. Yet this stability carried risks. The Black Death, devastating as it was, forced societies to adapt. It pushed cities to rethink sanitation and urban planning. It encouraged physicians to observe, experiment, and record, small steps that eventually led to modern science. It forced leaders to invent new systems of governance and economics to handle a world transformed by death. In a Europe without the plague, none of these pressures would exist. Public health might have stagnated. Feudal agriculture could have struggled to feed a growing population. Technology might have advanced more slowly because there was no urgent need for labor-saving devices. Without the harsh lessons of disaster, Europe may have been beautiful, but dangerously unprepared for future crises. Consider this. In our timeline, Europe faced new challenges: smallpox, influenza, the Little Ice Age, and survived because it had adapted through fire. In a world without the Black Death, those same challenges might have struck harder. Sometimes history's greatest tragedies are also its harshest teachers, and yet recent research suggests Europe nearly avoided catastrophe. Venetian records reveal that by the 14th century, city authorities were experimenting with quarantine, isolating ships, separating the sick, and burning infected goods. If these measures had succeeded, the plague might have been contained. Millions of lives could have been spared. But without that disaster, the modern world as we know it, shaped by innovation, upheaval, and progress born from crisis, might never have come into being. A Europe without the Black Death would have been stable, traditional, and artistically rich. But it also may have been slower, less adaptable, and unprepared for the future. The Black Death was a catastrophe that reshaped the course of history. Without it, the world we live in today would be unrecognizable. If you enjoyed this exploration of alternate history, make sure to like, share, and tell us in the comments what you think Europe would have looked like without the Black Death.